Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to New Brick Workshop. In this video, I'm continuing the work on the hall table. In the last video, I veneered the drawer front. Now in this video, I'm going to make the drawer completely and fit it. Now both the sides and the back I've cut at 13mm in thickness. Now a professional will probably go down to 10 and really do lovely dovetails, but in this drawer I'm not using dovetail joints. Now, you've already seen the drawer front, which is the veneered bit of MDF, but the drawer sides and back are going to be made from this chestnut. And it's a traditional wood to use for the inner parts of drawers. Now, I've planed this up and I've just trued it up on my track saw cutting station, and I'm now going to actually cut the sides to size. And I'm just truing up a face edge. Now, I have been asked many times about the planes I use, and I have three planes from Veritas, bought from Lee Valley, and they're available in the United Kingdom through Axminster. And this gadget is quite useful. It's a little aid so that you can keep an edge square when you're using one of the planes. Now all of this has turned out beautifully square, and I've cut it out on the track saw cutting station. Now the point is, track saw cutting station, if you've laid out accurately with the path guide system, you can produce almost everything that you would do on a miter saw, and you can certainly do almost everything that you do on a big table saw as far as cutting sheet material goes. So I really recommend that you create a track saw cutting station to the accuracy given by the path guide system, because then your woodwork becomes much simpler. And if you're on a budget, maybe you can have this before you get yourself a miter saw, and then certainly have this instead of a big table saw. Now all of the pieces for the sides and the front of the drawer are now cut to size, and the very back of the drawer, this piece, is going to sit down on the top of the drawer base. I've got a thin piece of MDF which is veneered, which I'm going to use for the drawer base, and because this is sitting on top of that, I've been able to use it to set the fence. Now I've had to hold my fence down with a couple of clamps because it doesn't ordinarily go back far enough. So that's organised there. Now I'll have to come to the cutting of the channel in the drawer front separately because it's not going to go all the way through to the end. But for these two side pieces, it will go all the way through to the end, and I'm going to start with those. Now I'm using as my reference edge the top of these pieces for all of these operations. I've set my cutter at just over 6mm in depth. So that's the two sides done. Now I've got to work out how I'm going to make sure I don't ruin the top by going all the way through. I've got an offcut from one of the pieces at the side here, and I'm just placing this here, square it up to the fence, and that gives me an idea of where I can go out to. So if I'm starting the cut here with the front of the drawer there, there'll be a small clearance before it gets to the outer edge. So I'm just going to mark that across here, and for the rear edge I'm going to do a similar thing just here. That's there, and I'm going to judge that to be about there. Start and finish. And needless to say, it's really important to make sure that one knows which is the outside, which is the inside, and which is the top. And I've got that worked out. So I'm going to start with this bit. And then we have the start and the finish pretty much where I want them, at least I think so. And to give you a clearer idea of how this drawer is going to go together, if you imagine that's the front, but it's upside down, This is going to be a side piece there. See, again, it's upside down. There's the other side piece here. And these side pieces are going to be flush with the two sides of the drawer front. And this piece is going to be set in at the back. And I hope you can see that the width of this coincides with where that rebate is for the drawer base. My next two jobs are, one is to put a rebate in the back of these two pieces to take this, and that's 13 millimeters wide, and then I'm going to do domino joints at the front here so that these two pieces can join onto the front of the drawer. And so I don't make a whoopsie, I've put a thin pencil line here and here to indicate which end of these pieces I'm going to use for the channel. Well, I've got my saw set up in trenching mode. The thing to remember with any miter saw, if you're doing trenching, you need something at the back, because otherwise when you stop, the back of your trench will be slightly curved, matching the shape of the blade in the saw. So you bring that forward. And I'm just going to do a test cut and just see if I got it to the right depth. And what I'm doing is I'm comparing the depth of the test cut to the depth of the channel I've put in here already. And the next thing to do is put a stop here, which will be where the rear part of the trench will be. And I think that's about right. This part is not rocket science. You can have the rear of the drawer absolutely wherever you want. So I'm going to do the cut, which is at the back. Now I've got to make sure I'm doing it the right way. There's my pencil line. So I'm going to do this cut first on both pieces. Then I will judge where the other cut should be for both pieces and then take away what's in between. So that's those done. Now all I've got to do are the domino joint at the other end and into the front of the drawer. I'm going to use dominoes which are 5 by 30. So it means I've got to put a 5mm cutter in. Now if you're new to the domino or haven't used it very often, once in a while you should put the tiniest drop of oil on the thread where you're going to screw the cutter. Screw it on, and when you tighten it, just give it a little nip like that. Don't, just a tiny little nip. That's all. No need to tighten it any more than that. Because it's 30mm long, I'm going to set the depth of cut to 15. That's set. And the next thing I need to do is the height of the cut. My stock is 13mm across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the sight gauge, which is here, and I'm going to set this at 6.5, which will put the domino in the middle of that piece of wood. So I'm going to release this. The bottom reading is 5, so you just go up 1.5 units from there. Not easy to judge that, but I believe that to be close enough for government work. Now, I always use the narrow setting. The only exception would be if you're doing breadboard ends in a wide piece of stock. So it's narrow, that's on 15. I've got the correct cutter and I've set the correct height. Now I've got to mark up the joints. So having eyeballed these up, I reckon I'm going to put a domino slot in with a centre at 25 and another one at 65, and that should do it. So I'm going to mark those 25 and 65. And that's measured from this reference edge here. Ipso dipso here, measure from that reference edge here. So it's 25 and 65. Now my reference for those was from the top. This now is my reference, that's the top, and this time I'm going to be measuring down this face because I'm going to be putting the dominoes in there. So I put this in the vise, it's the easiest thing to do, and I'm just going to mark a 25 there and a 65. And I'm going to leave this in the vise, actually cut those two dominoes, turn it over, measure and cut again for the other side, and then I'll do the other. And mark up the other side, remembering I'm marking from this edge this time. Now all I've got to do is do the ones in the sides. And so I've got my two pieces, they've already been marked, and I'm now just going to do the domino slots. So that's those done. Now all I've got to do is cut the base of the drawer. So I'm just going to see if I've got a square corner, and then once I've got that, I can then proceed. And this corner here is perfectly square, there and there, perfectly square. So I've just set this at 538. The beauty of this is that because of the path guide system, I can lift this out, take it away and do something else with it, or just take it away for another purpose. And when I'm ready, I put it back and I'm ready to go. All I need to do, I know which is my square corner here. So I'm going to put my track on there and do that cut. Now when you're using this fence arrangement and the stock goes beyond this way a bit, you can get a bit of a more accurate setup by having two of these. The saw cut is there. You can see how quick and easy it is using a track saw cutting station. Well, that's all sanded off. You notice I broke the edge of these corners just to make it easier to slot things together. Now I'm going to do a trial assembly before doing the actual final glue up. Well, it seems to be pretty good. The one thing I will check is that the width across the back, when I've pulled that up together, is no bigger than the width at the front. That is 551. At the front here, it's 551.5. So that's fine. So I'm happy now. I'm going to go ahead and glue up, bearing in mind that in here this is MDF and this is MDF. The only glue between the base and the frame will be at the front here because they're both an artificial piece of material, and the rest of the joints between the base and the sides will be dry. Now just a word of warning, when you've got a rebate like that and you want to tap these dominoes in, don't have that flat on the surface because you may break this piece off here. Have it slightly tilted back. And the same caution goes when you're inserting these pieces in. If you're going to tap it here, you're going to break that edge. So be very, very careful you don't do that. And what I've done is, I've got this piece of wood, I'm holding it away from the rebated part. That's nearly there. What I've got to do now is to clamp it, check it for square, and then leave it to dry. Now remember, there's no glue holding the base into these sides. The only glue is holding the base into the front, because the front is MDF and the base is MDF. There's going to be no movement between the two. I'm just going to clear up the excess glue. Not a lot of it. Now, with this bit of old credit card or whatever it was, which I've cut through, I've got a very sharp edge there, so I can get right into the corner and get those stubborn tiny bits of glue out from a corner. If anything, this wants to go very slightly that way, just by a tiny bit. Now, in order to encourage it to do that, the way to do that is to take a clamp, and if you want it to move that way, you put the clamp closer in that way, further out that way, and ditto at this end. I'll just check that. That's spot on there. And that is spot on there as well. So I'm pleased with that. I'm now going to leave the glue to dry, and then I'll sand it up. Now, because the back of my drawer goes all the way through and back into the frame, effectively made by the legs and the two rails at the back, that means it's a good idea to have a slight chamfer on the edges here, and also on the top there, and the bottom there, It's then, as the drawer goes back in, any slight variation left to right or up or down won't make the drawer suddenly stop when it hits part of the leg or the two rails. Now, I've already done these faces here. I'm just going to do the top there, and the bottoms. Now, this doesn't need to be very dramatic, but it just means it won't come to a dead stop if by chance part of this were to hit that rail. Now, having done that bit, I'm just going to finish it off with a sander. Now, the instructions for these runners are pretty good. First of all, you get a quick reference guide here, which has a lot of dimensions on there, and that's what I used when I was starting to do the design for this. And then you get this big piece of paper here, which goes into a bit more detail. And in this section here, it tells you how to do all of the adjustments, which are all terribly simple. Now you can see I've planted these two pieces on, one there and one there. And they've both got a little notch, which is where the little spike on the back of these drawer runners will fit. And you can see here how this fits into the back, and what that does, it stops the drawer from lifting off the rail, because the bottom of the drawer is quite thin and it's not screwed onto the top runner in any way, shape or form. So there it is, and then it comes like so. Now, one of the really good things about these Accuride under drawer runners is the amount of adjustment that you've got. It's all terribly simple, and these are actually beautiful because the adjustments on here allow you to get each drawer perfect. In order to get the adjustment front to back, there are these two screws here, one there, one there, so you can do each side independently. And I'm just going to return this to the sort of neutral position. I've got too big a gap for the adjustment to take care of, which is fine. I was expecting this, and so I'm going to put a shim glued to the back of the drawer front in here, and that will then bring the drawer effectively in contact with the mechanism, and then I can do any adjustment I need after that. So I'm now going to stick one each side, one that side and one this side, and then I'll be able to do the final connection between the actual mechanism and the drawer front. And I can actually connect these front pieces now onto here. I've pulled the drawer out, it's supported here with a piece of same thickness as the top rail, and I've made sure that these runners are moving freely and are equidistant from the edges here and here. And I'm just going to put a screw in here. In order to alter left to right, you're going to alter this grey screw, what is my left hand side now. And in order to get them up and down, on each side there's a blue screw there and there. So when it's finally up the right way, in situ, you can just reach underneath and make those adjustments to get it absolutely spot on. And in order to release a drawer, it's dead simple. There are these two blue clips. You push those outwards and the drawer will come free of the runners. I'll demonstrate it with everything the correct way up. You just put your hands underneath and feel for the two blue clips and squeeze them like so, and it comes away from the mechanism. All I've got to do now is a very light sand along the top of the front of the drawer, just so it fits not quite as snugly as it does at the moment. And also, if I turn this round, just a tiny bit off here, because that is just touching the underside of the back rail. So I've just got to do that little bit of easing with the sander on here and on the front, and then I can fit the handles. Now the handles I've chosen to use are these sort of oldie looking ones, and they have a bezel which fits underneath one of these end pieces. The end pieces have got threads on which go into the body of the drawer, and then you've got the drop down handle. Now the drawer is essentially finished now. I've drilled the holes for the handles, and I've checked them in the right place, and I have now adjusted the mechanism so that when I shut the drawer, it self-closes into the correct place. Well, that's the drawer done. It works really nicely with these Accuride runners, really nice. And in the next video, we're going to be doing the top and all of the Osmo. Many thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.